Art is not a commodity, but yet we need art to be fulfilled. Art should be priced by size. No, it should be priced by the amount of hours it takes to create it. As artists, we're very special. Or maybe we're not as special at all because it's very human to want to create. And what does it all mean for pricing anyway? I just want to sell my paintings. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, I'm Anastasia Mack. I'm here to show you the fun of expressive paintings, but I've been getting so many inquiries on how do I price my work that I decided to break it down for you. So I've been selling my art full-time for almost 2 decades now, and if I had to do it all over again, I would do it exactly the same way, except I would also put social media to use from the get-go. Because social media didn't really exist in the early 2000s. Can you imagine? It was so nice though. Okay, without further ado, here's my 5-step strategy on pricing your paintings as a beginner. Now, most of these tips are going to be aimed at pricing your original work, the kind that takes your blood, sweat, and tears to create. Step 1. Have a collection and test the appeal. First and foremost, please don't assume that you have to sell your art, because the process of painting itself has a ton of benefits without turning it into a product. Often the best work and best experimentation comes out of artists when there's no lingering question in the back of our minds. Will someone buy it? So if you haven't given yourself the freedom to do a ton of playing, make lots of mistakes, make ugly art, do whatever it takes to squeeze all the juices out of this process, stop this video right here and go do that first. Now, if you do want to attach prices to your paintings, 2 things should happen before dollar signs even come into play. A, you have a collection, which is a grouping of paintings, 10-15 is a good start, that showcase your personal style. You may not be confident in your style just yet, and that's okay. Confidence comes with experience, but it should be somewhat evident to the audience when they look at your work that all of your paintings were done by the same artist. There should be a cohesive storyline interwoven into your work. It's as if they're different movements of one symphony. B, you've tested the appeal of your art. Have you shown your art to people, and does it incite a reaction? And I don't mean from your friends and family, I mean from strangers. Are people intrigued by it? Does it stand out in some way? Does it generate interest? An easy beginner's way to do this is to start showing off your art consistently on social media or present it at an event that is friendly to beginner artists, and take note of any unsolicited commentary. Keyword here being unsolicited. If people don't like your work, they tend to stay silent. So if your work doesn't incite much of a reaction from general public, it doesn't matter what price point you attach to it. You're probably not set up to start selling it just yet. But that's okay though, it just gives you more freedom to keep playing around, to eventually start showing your uniqueness and your personality through your art. It is definitely a process, so don't be discouraged if you're not quite there yet. Step 2, market research. This is my favorite part. I mean, as visual creatures, most of us love visiting art shows and exhibits, right? That's where we get joy and inspiration, and also physical proof of this art business thing working for other people. So go out on your market where you aim to sell your work, whether it's galleries, events, or art festivals. See a lot of art and take a ton of detailed notes. Look out for artists that are selling paintings that could be comparable to yours in style, range of sizes, materials, and level of complexity. Be mindful also of these artists' career level. If they've been on the scene for some time and have a large following, their prices will also be at a much higher number, and that's not what you should aim for just yet. Write down the range of prices that these works are offered at. The more notes you take at this stage, the better you will understand your market. If you're social, hopefully you're somewhat social, talk to artists. Hopefully they can give you even more insight on how they're doing in that exhibition space. I do have to note here that some beginners get a little carried away with the research stage. They go on and on doing their market research for months or maybe years, at which point it's important to ask yourself, am I just procrastinating due to the fear of taking the next step? Because the next step is jump in and beta test your art sales. So now you have a price range from the previous step, which means by now you have a pretty good idea of how much paintings comparable to yours are selling for. And by comparable, I mean that they're similar in style, artwork size, level of complexity, and artist's career level. Beginner. As someone who's starting, the first simple step is to work off this range and just get your art out there. Set some numbers for yourself. Determine the price per square inch based on all that data, and that will be the most straightforward way to price your different sized canvases. Your pricing doesn't have to be refined yet because you're only beta testing right now the sales of your work. At this stage, your pricing simply should be consistent with your peers. The point of a beta test is to get your art in the hands of people. Start determining who your audience is, where they like to hang out, and discover if people will actually pay money for your art. Big note, as an emerging artist, it's much easier to gradually raise a lower price than to set it high and then suddenly have to bring it back down. Of course, you don't want to set your price so low that it feels uncomfortable as it relates to your work. But the beginning of an art business is where you're finding your footing. And the most important goal of a beta test is to find your audience. Get your art into your customers' hands and share that super special energy that is unique to you that sits within your paintings. Step 4, let's refine your formula. Now it's going to get a little bit more complicated. Now you have some art sales under your belt. How amazing! People value your art by purchasing it. But hey, if you're not there yet, backtrack to the previous steps. Does your art have appeal? Does it generate a reaction? And is your price range reasonable to pique people's interest? If things don't seem to align, solicit opinions about this. Join art critique or art business groups and even talk to your target audience. If you have generated sales though, now you're in business. So if it feels good and you want to continue your journey, now is the time to take a closer look at your pricing formula to see if it's actually sustainable. Let's get to some math. In this example, we're going to use 16 by 16 painting, like this size. First, you have the cost of your materials and supplies. The canvas is pretty straightforward, and paint and brushes can be an estimate. So let's say the canvas was priced $20. For paint, you have to look at your total spend and determine how much of that approximately was used on this painting. And for brushes, again, look at your total spend and note how often do you wear them out? How long do they last? So let's say the paint and the brushes for this piece came out to be $10. Next is labor hours. What is the average amount of time that it takes you to produce a piece of this size? Of course, it can be such a hard question. Unanimously, art festival artists dislike this question because it is the most commonly asked, and yet it can be the hardest one to answer. The creation process of each individual painting is quite unique and different, and that's why pricing your art by the number of labor hours ends up being a losing battle because it just confuses your buyers. I mean, we all have some work that comes out fast and beautiful without even trying that hard, and then there will be another piece of the same size that takes hours of extra aggravation and refinement. Visually though, to the people, there wouldn't be much difference between the two. And that's why if you were to price by the hour, chances are it would be strange for the audience to see different prices on identically sized paintings. In the beginning of art business though, it is still important to gain an idea of the average amount of time your paintings of each specific size take, just to have an understanding of what you would be paying yourself. So in our imaginary formula, let's say a 16 by 16 piece takes 5 hours to create, and you would be paying yourself $50 an hour for that work. By the way, I'm completely making up this number because your personal hourly compensation will depend on so many different factors. So it will vary greatly for each artist. Now we have the cost of materials, $30 plus $250 in painting time, which puts us at $280. But this number is not the price point yet because it is missing a margin for overhead and profit. Overhead is all the other expenses that go into running an art business, and there can be a ton of them. There are things like website design, studio rent, studio supplies, utilities, accounting, studio assistants, and the list goes on and on. Profit is money that goes into your bank towards the business after all these expenses have been paid. Again, this formula is going to be very different for every artist and very personal. Some of us have beautiful, expensive studios with super high rent, while others may be just working from their bedroom. In our imaginary case, I'm going to double the amount of cost it takes to make the painting to account for the overhead. So $280 times 2 is $560, and that compensates for your time, expenses, and maybe put some business funds in the bank. But we're not quite done just yet, because there's also what I call a sales channel margin. I'm treating it separately from the general overhead just so that you have a clear picture of how it all breaks down. Now, it's important to consider how you're going to sell your work. Are you selling direct to customers or through an art dealer, agent, gallery? If you plan to sell your art through the gallery, keep in mind that the gallery takes typically 40-50% commission. So to price this painting for a gallery sale where you as an artist would be fairly compensated, you would want to double your number. 560 times 2 is 1,020, and that's how gallery business works. If you plan to always sell your work on your own, you don't need to account for the gallery commission, but having consistent sales takes time and money in other ways. For example, if you go the art festival route, you have show expenses, promotional expenses, festival equipment, festival packing and unpacking time that you have to account for, festival setup time, lodging, gas money, the hours you spent doing the show, and on and on and on. If you're only selling your work online, unless you already have a huge following that repeatedly buy from you, you will likely have advertising spend and those types of extra marketing expenses. That is all to say that just because you may not be selling through a gallery doesn't mean that you won't have additional sales channel spend. You're going to be paying to get your work out there, either in your time or money, or both, because let's face it, time is money. So whatever sales route you choose, there still should be a sales channel margin added for this expense. So let's say we will add 60% of the total. We'll keep it a little less than the gallery commission. So $560 times 1.6 equals $896. I do have to pause here and mention that despite me giving different sales margin markup options, if you choose to sell through multiple channels, like if you sell through gallery and you sell direct, and maybe perhaps you sell also through an agent, your pricing should absolutely remain consistent between all three, regardless which percentage for the sales channel margin you choose in the end. Lastly, something else to consider. Is your painting image going to be a single one-off original, or is it going to be reproduced into prints? Because if you're creating this painting as an image to be sold over and over again, maybe, just maybe, it may affect your painting's pricing formula. Maybe you'll decide to ask for less money for this original because you'll also know that you will have a very strong print market on the back end. Again, this is a very personal decision for an artist and their growing business. Eventually, the price you said will allow you to calculate your price per inch so that you can apply this multiplier to other canvas sizes. For the example displayed here, let's do the 896 price point. So 16 by 16 inches adds up to be 256. And 896 divided by 256 is $3.5 per inch. So your multiplier now is $3.5 per square inch. Again, I'm working with all arbitrary numbers, but the point of all this math is to help you zoom out and see the bigger picture and to determine a simple formula. And then to also see whether this art business is sustainable long-term. And perhaps maybe see if you have any pricing inefficiencies when it comes to your work. It's a great exercise to go through because now you can check, do these numbers align with the pricing of my peers? Are they drastically higher or lower than the work of this caliber is priced at? And if they are, figure out why. There are many ways to rework the formula, but you have to be absolutely certain that it's going to make it a sustainable business for you in the long run. And if you're discouraged by this avalanche of numbers, keep in mind that it's a slow process and will take some adjustments as you gain experience, but it allows you to see whether your true hours and expenses justify the price that you have set back in your beta test. Psst, hey, you want to buy some paintings? If not, but you're enjoying this video, do me a favor and hit a like button. Step 5, we're not done yet, or we're getting close to done, but this is going to raise some important points here. Raise your value, yet watch out for bad pricing advice. Art is not a commodity, of course. It is, on one hand, a luxury, but on the other hand, who doesn't consume art in some form? It is a part of our unique, fulfilling human experience. Owning original art is simply awesome. That said, there's some truly bad pricing advice out there. Bad advice usually comes with good intentions, so how often it is hard to know that you're getting bad advice until you actually see it in hindsight. Be analytical about the pricing suggestions you may get. Heck, be analytical about what I'm saying here too. So for example, when I first started selling my work, a few experts would tell me, it doesn't matter what the price of your art is. People who really love it will buy it no matter the number. And that was a nice fairy tale, but if that was the case, all of us artists would be selling 50,000 originals as long as the buyer really, really wants it, right? The truth is though, your art may be the most glorious, delicious, magical unicorn, but it's still a product that is subject to market forces and supply and demand. Another piece of advice that leaves me scratching my head is never compare yourself with others in the art world because your pricing should be your energetic match. Look, I'm all about energy alignment, but a huge part of that is rooted in belief. And belief first comes from evidence. So, if you want to raise the price of your art, it's not as easy as taking $1,000 piece and marking it up to $10,000. Because to raise the price of art, first you have to raise the value of art, or the value of yourself as an artist, or both. And then you should mark up the price to match the value. The value of your art gets raised, of course, by acquiring more experience and creating more interesting and appealing work. If you paint portraits, how do your portraits stand out from all the other ones out there? What kind of unique fingerprint does your art show? Why do people notice your work? Now, you raise the value of yourself as an artist by showing off more of who you are. As artists, we can't separate ourselves from our creations. Well, maybe we can, because you can find plenty of art without names in Walmart, but you see what that's missing, right? It's missing an artist brand. That's why it's so cheap. Have you ever seen celebrities selling not so good paintings for huge amounts of money? Clearly, the value of them is very high, and that is why the audience is willing to spend the cash for subpar work. Most of us don't have celebrity status, but that's okay, who needs that? You have an artist status. You have an opportunity to weave your stories, your personalities, your background, your little quirks into your work. Don't be afraid to show off who you are and not just hide behind the beautiful images of your paintings. You showing off you creates stronger connections. And I can say that after selling my work for all this time, I absolutely love my collectors because of the connections that we have made. My art is always a reflection of me and my people align with it. And through that, I've cultivated so many friendships with my buyers over the years. Even though this path is not easy and can be quite time-consuming, the rewards of knowing people that my art has connected me with have been absolutely tremendous. So get out there, put some numbers on your art, and find your people, because that's what keeps me coming back to my easel over and over again. So I wrap up an art festival, get back to my studio, unpack my art, and go ahead and create something like